Getting some momentum in college football can make all the difference. College football is a ripple effect kind of sport. If you win on the field, it helps recruiting. And then when you recruit good players, it helps you win some more. And so I want us to answer this question together. Who are the teams in college football that you should be saying, hey, don't let them get hot? They're swinging a hot bat. When that basket gets wide, they could be a problem for the rest of the college football landscape. You know who else they shouldn't let get hot is this show. And y'all as the audience making this thing happen. Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024, the last June 5th, 2024 on the face of the planet. And we're glad that you're choosing to spend it with us. This show, if you're just now finding us, is college football and nothing but college football, okay? No appetizers, no side dishes. It's just the entree, which is, of course, the Saturday sport that you and I both love and adore with every fiber of our being. So we're glad that you're a part of this. We got a ton to jump into today. I don't know if y'all were noticing, but if you had your head on a swivel and have been tuned in and subscribed to the Hayes Fawcett notifications over there on the Twitter sphere and the On3 notifications on the Twitter sphere, then you saw that Alabama got the spatula out, a little flip action, got themselves a quarterback of the future in Keelan Russell. He was previously committed to SMU. He has flipped his commitment to Kalen DeBoer and the Tide. Don't look now, but Kalen DeBoer looks like he's recruiting. That was the big question when he got Tuscaloosa. Will he recruit? And looks like he's doing just fine. We'll unpack the recruitment and commitment of Keelan Russell, and we will also unpack the macro impact of his commitment and where Alabama is currently when it comes to the recruiting trail. Nebraska. What do you think of when I say Nebraska? When you look at 2024, what do you think is an appropriate win total for the Cornhuskers? Because it's always been so close, right? Like that Rod Wave syndrome we talk a lot about on this show. Heart been broke so many times, I don't know what to believe. That's how this fan base has felt for the better part of the last 2-3 seasons. What should you believe when it comes to win total for Dylan Raiola, Matt Rhule and Co out there in Lincoln? We'll give you our number there. Also, anybody notice how Michigan has just very, very casually flown under everybody's radar? And some of that is warranted. A lot of new production that's going to have to step up out there in Ann Arbor. You got a new head coach, you got a new quarterback, but still, man, I mean, did they not just win the whole freaking thing last year? Did they not just hoist the national championship trophy a season ago? I'm just saying, Michigan flying under the radar. Why is that? And what should we keep a tab on with Michigan this upcoming season? We'll talk about that. Drive to Survive, phenomenal Netflix series. It sounds like now the good folks at Netflix peeking around the corner, taking a look at the SEC and some head coaches in the SEC, and maybe, just maybe, we're getting a documentary series for some of those coaches in that conference. We'll talk about that as well and kind of some coaches we would like to see follow when it comes to that series. Also, our Don't Let Them Get Hot teams that I mentioned at the top of this thing, we will talk about in a matter of moments. But again, we're glad to have you all here. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast feed. Also, I would recommend now, if you want to get all the way engaged to the content we got going on over here, following on the social platforms. Instagram and Twitter, same handle, at JD Piquel. We have a lot of content over there that we're starting to cook up for you that isn't necessarily going to be on the YouTube platform. So make sure you're subscribed, following all that over there, and we'll make sure we're locked into the nth degree as we jump headfirst into media days and fall camp, and before you know it, it's going to be week 0, which is, of course, something that we honor here as college football junkies. Crazy, man. I think we're like 4 or 5 weeks from SEC media days in Dallas. It's here. It's basically already here. So, with that being said, I want to continue, though, and start with our State of series that we started yesterday. We talked about the state of the college football playoff. Today, I want us to talk about the state of high school recruiting when it comes to the college football world, because these kids now, we had 45 of them, give or take, of the top talent in America, the top high school players in America, in Nashville, Tennessee for the On3 Elite Series, and got to sit down with them one-on-one, pick their brain, talk on the record, talk off the record. And one of the things that I came into that event thinking about, and I'm still thinking about now, is there has never been more thrown at these kids as recruits than there is right now. NIL is the headline, right? These kids are probably, in some regards, different top prospects are in the range of like 6 to 7 figures. You have to imagine they're bringing in. Social media, I mean, these kids are celebrities before they even step on campus at their respective schools. Like, I guarantee you, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, when he stepped foot in Knoxville for that first class, like everybody, I promise you, probably wanted to take pictures. At the very least, they knew who he was from a distance. Like, you are a celebrity as a high school recruit these days before you even play a snap of college football. That's a lot of pressure. The coverage of recruiting, it's massive. Like, recruiting is the lifeblood of college football, and we have, I think, gotten more and more a gauge for that as a college football public, and so there is a demand to know about who we're recruiting, what that recruit brings to the table. Are they going to commit or are they not going to commit? I mean, commitments in general today are productions more than ever before. So the pressure around these kids is immense. It's enormous. They're like 17, 18 years old having to deal with adult kind of situations. And so for the schools and for the staffs, there has also never been more pressure to evaluate the mental makeup of these kids. So I'll tell you what, man, 17-year-olds, you're not supposed to be the face of a franchise, but in college football you are, especially if you're a quarterback. So how are they going to respond to however many NIL dollars thrown their way? How are they going to respond to people on social media saying negative things to them? How are they going to respond to not performing well when they have a big NIL payday already coming their way and the boosters are upset? Like, there's so many other things outside of football that these kids now have to deal with. And I think as a coaching staff, like I just said, knowing how they'll respond to that and knowing their competitive DNA, how they're going to be able to handle those things, the importance of that has never been greater. I think it's also worth noting that when it comes to recruiting at the high school level, the kids that are actually playing the sport from a football perspective have never had more resources and more development than they do right now. Long gone are the days where you play 3 sports, maybe 4 sports, depending on your high school, because you're a great athlete and you want to do it one more time with your boys. You want to play baseball. You want to play basketball. Now, especially if you're a quarterback, you specialize in playing quarterback year-round. You play 7-on-7. You work with your quarterback coach. You're with your high school team, and that just is rinse and repeat for 4 years, so you are the most polished product you can be by the time you get to the collegiate ranks. So when you talk about how they're translating to the college level, not just quarterbacks, but players in general, I think sports science also has a lot to do with this. We're seeing more freshmen show up on campus ready to play. I don't have any numbers to back this up, but it feels like to me there has never been more freak show true freshmen at different schools that show up and turn heads during either spring ball or winter conditioning or whatever. And some of that's just because, or not winter conditioning, I suppose winter conditioning factors in, fall camp. Like, there's so much these kids have access to be college ready that I don't think we've had before. And so I think that's arguably more important than it's been in the past, because the way the portal works now, your situation as a high school kid, as a true freshman, what you commit to can change at the drop of a hat. I keep going back to the quarterback because I think that's just the most comprehensive position for us to talk through. I understand as I go to college, the thing I'm being told, the thing I am believing as I commit to my school is I'm going to redshirt for 1 year. I'm going to learn what I need to learn, figure out college life, and then my true sophomore year, I'm playing ball. I'm the guy. That's the blueprint laid out for me, right? When I commit, when I put pen to paper. Well, as it turns out, during that 1 year where I was redshirting, coach is on the hot seat. We got some problems. He's got to win now. He doesn't have the luxury of relying on a first-time redshirt freshman playing quarterback for him, first-time starting quarterback in college football. We don't have that luxury. So what happens? They go to the portal. They bring somebody in. And now, as a redshirt freshman that I previously thought I would sit 1 year then play, I now have a decision to make. Am I going to sit for another year, wait my turn, compete for the job, or maybe more than 1 year? Do I jump in the portal and go somewhere else? Like, the portal has thrown a massive variable into the high school recruiting world, obviously for these kids, but also for these coaches, for these staffs. Like, you now, in a lot of ways, don't have to lean quite as heavily on the high school level or development. You can go to the portal and use it how Lane Kiffin has used it and have that be your bread and butter and be how you build your football team. For Florida State, it can be the way that you re-energize your football team. Like Mike Norvell, when he got to Tallahassee, that was not an operation that had the talent that he needed to win at the highest level. So what does he do? Goes to the portal, markets playing time, markets the ability to develop at Florida State, and they've done a great job of that. And now you're starting to see some return on investment on the field to the high school recruiting trail level. Not always going to be the way that these teams operate, but those teams used to recruit in the 20s, both Florida State and Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss probably wants to keep leaning on the portal. Florida State, I think they want to continue to lean on the portal, but also on the high school level. The bottom line is your strategy has changed if you're a college football head coach with how you recruit and how you handle the portal. It's no longer, lean on the high school level and maybe use the portal. It's like, no, we're using the portal. It's just a matter of how much we're going to use it this upcoming season and how much we need to use it based on our roster. Relationships at the high school level used to be all you would talk about when it came to why kids would choose a school. And NIL, like I said previously, it gets the headlines now, and it should. It's a massive part as to, where I would go to school if I were a top recruit at the high school level. But I think, going back to what I just said, it has never been more important to finish on signing day in the top 3 to 5 for a top recruit. Because we've seen this now multiple times. Coach leaves, kids unhappy, situation isn't what they thought they were getting into. They jump in the portal. Who's typically the schools that we look at first? Hey, who did they have a relationship with out of high school? Hey, who recruited them hard that they almost maybe gave a little bit of extra consideration to before they signed with the other school? Like Caleb Downs is a great example, and I've told this story before on this show. I'm at Michigan, Ohio State. The year is 2022. We're in Columbus. Massive game, massive recruiting weekend for the Buckeyes. Caleb Downs is committed to Alabama at this point in time. However, he ended up on Ohio State's sideline that day. Little surprise visit, shows up in Columbus, and taking an extra look at the Buckeyes. So what that tells me is Caleb Downs more than likely had a good relationship with that Ohio State staff out of high school, even while being committed to Alabama. If he didn't, I don't know why you would take a visit the day of the Iron Bowl. I get Ohio State-Michigan's a great game, but it is what it is. So then fast forward the tape. Nick Saban retires. Caleb Downs jumps in the portal. And where does he end up at? A lot of smoke around Georgia, but he ends up at Ohio State. And I'm not, so naive to assume there weren't other factors involved there as to why you would pick Ohio State. But again, the relationship side of things. If Ohio State, on signing day, when Caleb Downs ends up committing to Alabama, or staying committed to Alabama rather, puts pen to paper, if that staff and Tim Walton had just said, forget this guy, and they just totally cut ties, burned the bridges, all that, you think Caleb Downs is transferring to Ohio State when Nick Saban retires? No. So again, the relationship side of things and continuing those relationships and making sure you leave off on a good foot whether or not that kid commits to your school, that's massively important. Massively important because you never know who you're going to have a second chance at recruiting if you don't get them at the high school level. Going back to what I said, it's never been more important to be in that top 3 to 5 range, be one of those hats on the table for these top kids on National Signing Day. So for high school players and for just the recruiting world period, NIL is a major factor. That's 100% true. But I think the thing that we've continued to be told by big college football is, hey, NIL is going to provide massive parity to recruiting. Like you're gonna see just a total shakeup in the college football world, and different teams are going to win more national championships and this, that, and the other. And what we've said on this show is there is a level of truth to that statement. It's absolutely true. If you want to get into the NIL game and be a major player, you're going to give yourself a better chance to land more top recruits. However, in 2020 rather, these teams were all in the top 10 of the industry team recruiting rankings. You had Bama, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ohio State. That's not in order, by the way. That's just the schools that were in the top 10. Fast forward the tape. NIL world, right? We're here in 2024. All those schools were still in the top 10. So I'm not saying NIL doesn't factor in, but to assume that that's going to just shake up the entire landscape and you're having, Ohio State fall out of the top 10, like, listen, these big brands, these big boys, these big fan bases, they got deep pockets too. They got resources too. They're going to play the game. And when it comes to actually playing the game of football on the field, here's what wins. Talent, culture, coaching, development. Notice, talent is the only part of that equation that relates to NIL, that relates to recruiting. Now, recruiting and talent is a massive, massive piece of that pie. Do not get it twisted, but to assume that just because NIL is a factor now, we're going to have X, Y, and Z teams come out of nowhere and win national championships, to me, that's a harder sell. That's a harder pitch for me to get behind. So the sentiment I want to kind of drive home there, what works previously, those things I just mentioned, those key ingredients, coaching, development, culture, talent, still what works today in modern college football. As much as the landscape is changing and shifting and we're having revenue sharing conversations with, the way that these kids can now be paid, I understand all that. That's all fair. But to talk about what we talked about this past week at the On3 Elite Series, the main thing, which is football, is still the main thing for a lot of these kids. The main thing, which is relationships, is still the main thing for a lot of these kids and for this staff as well. Winning football games, the results, the main thing, that still is what comes before any NIL payment or anything on that front. So that's, to me, the state of recruiting. Ton of pressure on these kids, a lot of shifting pieces with what's being thrown at them from social media to recruiting coverage to NIL dollars to pressure. How you evaluate them as a staff from the neck up has never been more important. The resources and the specialization of football and only football year-round for these kids and the sports science, I think, is making for a lot more freak shows at the high school level that translate to the college level quicker. And good thing, because the portal now, it gives and it takes. Changes your situation in a matter of moments. So being able to compete early for a job is obviously what a lot of these kids desire, I have to believe, because they're all competitors if you're one of those top recruits. But it's more important to be able to make an impression, because the portal, you never know who's entering that position room with you. And if you're a school, you have more opportunity now to fix your recruiting mistakes or kind of help revamp your roster, or heck, just lean on the portal period with how you add talent. But even with that being the case, what wins and what has won in college football previously is still what wins. Talent is a massive part of that, but those schools that are going to specialize in adding talented players, if they did it on the recruiting trail previously, they're still going to do that now in the NIL era, regardless of what that looks like from the outside looking in. Like, if you want to add top players and you're prioritizing football as a school, you're going to make sure you have the NIL funds to keep up and to keep pace and to win how you expect to win, all right? The standard does not change. So let me know in the comment section where you think the current state of high school recruiting is in the college football landscape. That'll be a fun discussion to have. Great segue from recruiting into our next segment. Recruiting, many times, is like a chicken or the egg situation with winning. If you recruit well, do you win? Well, if you win, you recruit well. A lot of times it's difficult to tell which comes first exactly. In that same vein, who would be the teams in college football that you would not want to see hot because they could wreak havoc on the rest of the college football landscape? I think Auburn has got to be in this discussion, because Auburn just finished up locking in a top 10 class. No biggie. Hugh Freeze, a little bit chilly in here. The Freeze era is rolling. They locked up a top 10 class in a season in which they won 6 ball games and lost to New Mexico State. Let that sink in for a second. And they locked in a top 10 class. That tells me that Hugh Freeze is, 1, a dog of a recruiter, which we already knew. 2, that entire staff is crushing on the recruiting trail, and they have the same vision. They're all aligned there. Will Redmond, the GM, is one of the best, if not the best, in the whole freaking business. So let's get that straight. What happens if they start winning? What happens if in year 2 they go out and win 9+ football games? I have a hard time believing that if you can lock in a top 10 class with 6 wins, if you get 9+ wins, I could see them being in the top 5. That would not shock me in the slightest. They didn't have it last year. And they took Georgia and Bama to the final drive. Bama more or less to the last play. They didn't have the roster talent to compete with those teams, or beat those teams, rather, and get it done based on those results. But if they start recruiting at a top 5, top 10 consistently level, Auburn and Hugh Freeze are going to be a problem in the SEC. They will wreak havoc on that conference, and they will be one of the big boys in that conference. Auburn will be all the way back. Let's just get that out there. Miami. We talk a lot about Miami on this show because I think there's just a lot of relevance to them right now. I mean, like, kids are looking to go to Miami. Like, kids are looking for a reason to go play in Coral Gables. I'm just saying that, all right? If they recruit the state well, Mario Cristobal, that is, if they just put a fence around the state of Miami, as Howard Schnellenberger would say, or they just lock down the state of Florida, I guess, period, they will win championships, both at a conference level and potentially at a national level. Cristobal is going to attack on the recruiting trail. We've already seen that. Multiple top 10 classes already. Now they need to win. And if they have success this upcoming season, I think the momentum that would create on the recruiting trail and the belief that would sell to these kids, if they go win the ACC or they make the college football playoff, or heck, if they do both, which if you win the ACC, you're obviously in the playoff, there's no more selling a vision. It is, hey, this thing is rolling. You want on? It's no, hey, come here, come be a part of this. We've been good in the past. You can sell that, obviously, but there's no more selling the trajectory. It's like, hey, we've arrived. You want to play for us? Again, the resources they have, they will play ball. They're playing ball at Miami when it comes to the NIL sphere. The momentum they have and the momentum that would create would make them a problem in the ACC, and that'd be a problem for the rest of college football if Miami ends up getting some leverage in the Sunshine State when it comes to recruiting. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman is one of my favorite head coaches in the whole sport. I'll say that right now. There is a little bit of a stigma around Notre Dame. Big brand, good school, great education, but are you really winning national championships at Notre Dame? If they get hot now, and this might be the year to do it, they got a squad to do it with what they did via the portal, grabbing Riley Leonard, grabbing Chris Mitchell and Jaden Harrison, two explosive wide receivers on the perimeter. If they get hot and they start winning at a high level, they have a coach who will hustle on the recruiting trail. And I think the last thing that college football would want, if you're recruiting against Marcus Freeman, is he walks into a living room, walks into a high school and says, Marcus Freeman, head coach of Notre Dame Fighting Irish, made the playoff last year. Made the playoff the year before. Made the playoff the year before that. Like, if they can consistently sell that they are a habitual playoff attender and national title contender, that would, I think, change the entire optics around Notre Dame. And I think they would go from being in that top 10 range on the recruiting trail to being in the top 5 range. And that, to me, is what has separated Notre Dame from competing for, being in the playoff to ultimately winning the playoff. Like, the talent disparity has been the deal for Notre Dame. But if they can win and they get hot, Marcus Freeman will use that ammo to arm his roster with what they need, and Notre Dame will be in that national title conversation. This is one that I think we're going to get some pushback on, but it might be the one that I feel most strongly about. Colorado. And I know it's only been 1 year, and I know they went 4-8, and I'm not telling you they're going to go win 10 games this year. In fact, I think making a bowl game is probably success for them in 2024. But if they get hot, that Deion effect is real. Now, I'd love to see him make some home visits. I've been very vocal about that. But there is not a head coach in college football with more charisma and who is able to maximize success on the field to his benefit. You don't believe me? Look at last year. Y'all, Colorado went 2-0. 2-0. They didn't reel off 6 wins, 10 wins in a row. They went 2-0 and had Colorado State come into town. Not Bama, not Georgia, not Texas, not this massive brand. Colorado State. And College Game Day was there. Not because the game was supposed to be awesome, although it was. They were there for Deion Sanders. They were there for the juice, the buzz, the hype, all those things. And some people want to spin that as a negative when it comes to the hype around Colorado. I think it's a great thing if you're Deion Sanders. You use hype. You bottle it up. You take it on the recruiting trail. You pitch it to top recruits and say, you want to come play for us? Here's what we have to offer. National exposure. National attention. Build your brand while we win football games. If Colorado gets hot, we've seen what they are when they go 3-0. They're all anybody wants to talk about when they go 3-0. What if Colorado goes out and wins 8 games, like Joel Klatt was saying is a possibility? If they get hot, the Deion effect will be 10x'd in the future. I think that'd be dangerous because I know it sounds funny right now. It's all jokes right now, but Colorado and Deion would be a factor in a lot of recruitments. And if he goes on, I'll just say it, I'm on my soapbox. It's too late. If he goes out and does in-home visits, God bless you. God bless you, because Deion in the living room is an absolute problem. And we haven't even seen it yet, but I promise you, he would be a problem. Last team here, Tennessee. We've seen them have some momentum from that 2022 year going into 2023. The thing with Tennessee and the thing with me with Josh Heupel is like, brother, he's always going to recruit the quarterback position well. He is. He is. Say what you want about Joe Milton. They got Nico Imaliava, got Jake Merklinger from this last class, and George McIntyre, who's one of the top quarterbacks in that 2025 cycle. they become extra dangerous when they start winning, and then they can start to stockpile more depth at other positions. Because when Tennessee is able to add more talent at other positions, they've already done a good job of that, but when they provide more proof of concept and you get more buy-in on the offensive line, maybe you go land a David Sanders, or maybe you're able to add more freak show defensive talent after seeing what James Pierce does this upcoming season. When you can add more versatility across the board with how you recruit at a top-tier level, then Tennessee has closed the gap on the Alabamas, on the Georgias. That's really, I think, the big thing for me. I don't need Tennessee to recruit at the number 1 ranked class every single year, but I do need them to be within that top 10, to be within striking distance from a talent level on the LSUs, Georgias, Bamas, Texases, schools like that. That's not saying they haven't beat schools like that. I mean, folks remember the Alabama game like it was yesterday out there in Knoxville. But I just think if you want to consistently compete at the top level in college football, that would be how you get it done. You win games on the field, you attract more talent in the trenches and at other positions defensively, they're rolling. Rocky Top will be stuck in a lot of people's heads across the college football landscape. And not just because you're playing CFB 25 and your guy in Road to Glory is playing for Josh Heupel and co. So my don't let them get hot teams in review. Auburn, the freeze era, man, just getting started. Got a top 10 class with 6 wins. You get cooking now if they win more than that and they get in that 9-win territory. Miami, the U sells itself. If they're able to win, you're not pitching vision. You're pitching get on the bus with us. Notre Dame, if you win at a high level, they get hot, you remove that stigma. Marcus Freeman, he's a dog. He will recruit at a top level. If he has the ammo behind him on the field, game, set, match. Colorado, the Deion effect, it's real. We've seen it. But if they're able to really start winning games, Deion Sanders will maximize that for all it's worth, and they will be a problem. Tennessee, I just said, they recruit quarterback great. If they start winning and add talent at other positions, Tennessee will be a force. They will be a force. All right. Thanks for being tuned in live, y'all. Hey, if you're watching right now, I want you to just check real quick on the On3 YouTube channel, that subscribe button. Click that. It helps us because we obviously are able to grow the platform. 2, it helps you because we have more data on what you want to see. This is a supply and demand kind of show. You know, you demand it, we supply it. That's kind of how this whole thing works. We are your college football plug, to put it simply, and we're pretty shameless about it. So subscribe so we know what you want to see. Thank you so much in advance for that. So let's get right to it here. There was some big news that broke yesterday. Kalen DeBoer, question mark around, hey, will he recruit? Can he recruit? I was asking that exact same question. We got a little bit more data yesterday. Keelan Russell, one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2025, flips his commitment from SMU in Dallas, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, playing for Kalen DeBoer. What does it mean for the Tide? What does it mean for Keelan Russell and the immediate future at Bama? What does it mean on a macro level when it comes to Alabama on the recruiting show? We'll talk about that. Quick plug, make sure you're subscribed right here. College ball, only college ball, every single day of the year. Christmas, you want college ball? We got you. Thanksgiving, you want college football? We got you. Okay, live 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on this platform. Also, follow me on the socials at JD Piquel, Twitter and Instagram. Great place for us to interact when we're not on the air. So, Keelan Russell, as I mentioned, flipped from SMU to Alabama, 4-star quarterback. Let's get out in front of this whole talking point right away. There was a lot of folks that were very quick to take the low-hanging fruit and say, he flipped from where? Good for Bama. Good. Y'all got a quarterback from SMU. That is awesome. Congratulations. That's awesome. Listen, he was committed to SMU. That's true, and people are remembering them as a G5 school. One, they're in the ACC, so put some respect on the Mustangs' name and Rhett Lashley's name. Other part of this, the rating doesn't lie. Dude's a 4-star, one of the top quarterbacks in the 2025 class. You turn on the tape. Listen, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. I'm not a scout, but I can tell with my own eyes this dude can sling the pill. 6'3", nice frame, 182 pounds, moves well, throws well. He's got a rocket for an arm. He also throws really well on the run, which popped up during his highlight tape. Again, not a scout, just telling you what I'm seeing. Threw for over 3,000 yards this past season at Duncanville, which is big boy football in Texas. 35 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Translation, the dude can ball. Alabama wasn't reaching here for some prospect at SMU. It was like, no, dude can ball, all right? Also, Rhett Lashley, he knows quarterbacks. Just go ahead and check how Preston Stone has been doing at SMU. Go ahead and check out where Preston Stone also could have gone to college if you need more information on that. So this is a big deal that Alabama was able to land Keelan Russell. When Kalen DeBoer has his quarterback, it's like adding gas to the car that is his offense. He's an offensive mastermind. I understand Ryan Grubb has been his OC. I get all that, but Kalen DeBoer, this will be his offense. It has been his offense at different stops. When he had Michael Penix Jr. at Washington, what happened? They cooked. Now, there was other pieces around Michael Penix Jr., don't get it twisted, but they cooked. They put up big-time numbers, had the best offense in college football. At Fresno State, he had Jake Haener. What happened? They cooked. They also put up big-time numbers. So I say that to make 2 points. One, when Kalen DeBoer has his quarterback, he's able to unlock the entire offense, put up big numbers, and play the kind of ball he wants to play. He's got the ingredients to make it happen. The other point I want to make here is Kalen DeBoer knows what it looks like. Like, Kalen DeBoer had Michael Penix Jr. drafted in the top 10 of this past year's NFL draft with multiple injuries. Like, Kalen DeBoer getting him drafted that high, and that's not taking anything away from Michael Penix Jr. The point is, Kalen DeBoer has been around a lot of good quarterbacks, so the fact that he's taking Keelan Russell should also speak volumes to Keelan Russell and his potential in Tuscaloosa. So now for Alabama on the recruiting trail, this is huge because you have your centerpiece for the 2025 class. You can tell everyone, hey, this is our guy. You can kind of make it a commercial of sorts. This is the pitch. If you want to come play at Alabama, you want to come play for us out here in Tuscaloosa, you're playing with this dude. Go turn on the tape and watch what he does. So the staff now has someone to recruit behind, but also someone for your class, committed or not, to buy into. Like skill, they watch Keelan Russell, they want to play with him. Offensive linemen, they want to block for him. Defense, I promise you, it is a game changer having a quarterback that can move the football up and down the field for you and take some pressure off your defense, also give your defense a chance to rest. Like, there's a lot of – everyone is attracted when you have the quarterback right. And Alabama now can make that pitch that they have the quarterback right. So don't look now. But Kalen DeBoer is recruiting. Now, there's a long way to go till National Signing Day. It's still very, very early on in the process. But Alabama currently has the number 6 class in the On3 industry team recruiting rankings with 11 commitments. And this was the question now for all of us, myself included, and it's not answered just yet, but we're a lot closer to an answer. Will Kalen DeBoer recruit? Because the question was never, man, can he coach? We know the dude can coach. You don't go 104-12 on accident as a head coach. We know he can coach ball. The question was, can he add the top talent to win in the SEC? Because there's been a lot of good coaches that have walked into the SEC and got chewed up and spit out. It's not a matter of can you coach ball. That's one part of it. But it's a matter of also being able to go out and add the right ingredients to be able to cook, to be able to coach ball. Kalen DeBoer so far saying, yep, check, got it. What's next? And this year, if Alabama goes out and wins 10-plus football games, if they win the SEC, gosh dang it, this was a team you could also add to the don't let them get hot list. Because a lot of recruits rather, are wondering now for the first time in 15-plus years, who is Alabama going to be? Like, the optics for Alabama in a lot of ways are vulnerable with Nick Saban gone from Tuscaloosa, or gone from the head coach of Tuscaloosa, and Kalen DeBoer era now beginning. So if you're an opposing head coach in the SEC, what you'd like to have happen is Kalen DeBoer kind of stumbles out of the gates, has to recruit from behind, has to sell vision, all those things. But if they go out and do what I just said, they go out and win 10-plus games, compete for the SEC championship, if they make the college football playoff, that restabilizes optics, that reassures recruits that, okay, new coach, yes, but Bama, that script A, Bama's still Bama. I go play for them in Tuscaloosa, I go play with Keelan Russell, we're still going to compete at a Tier 1 level. I'm not sacrificing anything by committing to this new Alabama. So if they have proof of concept on the field this upcoming season, it's just going to further stock the cupboard and going to only help their efforts when it comes to adding top talent at the high school level. So full transparency, what Kalen DeBoer is as a recruiter, I think long-term, We're still going to have to get a few more classes under his belt to have a definitive statement on a yes, he can or no, he can't recruit. But if you just want to take this for what it's worth at face value, Kalen DeBoer's working. Kalen DeBoer's working. He's cooking, and he has added his quarterback of the future in Keelan Russell. Big flip for the Tide. Big flip for the Tide. Hey, Nick, big time on that lower third, brother. Nick and I are in the studio probably – so we do a countdown. It's about a minute before we go live, and Nick says, okay, minute 30. Okay, we're at a minute, 30 seconds. And then Nick goes, hey, do we have that Keelan Russell lower third? I had forgotten to request it. And so what do? Johnny on the spot. Nick, grab and go. It's lower third for us, just so we got the optics right for the show for you. If you're watching on podcast, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, just video stuff. All right, let's keep it moving here. Nebraska. What's Nebraska going to be in 2024? If you're a Nebraska Cornhusker fan, what do you want your Cornhuskers to be in 2024? We've done this for a couple of teams. We now take the party to Lincoln. What would be the win total for Nebraska that you would be content with in 2024? Now, I took this question, walked it on over to our Nebraska On 3 site, Huskers Online, asked that fan base what they would like, and I'll talk about it here just a little bit later. Vegas has got Nebraska pegged at over-under preseason 7.5 wins. Now, this fan base, again, we said at the top of the show, I'll say it again, they are starved. They are hungry. Not hungry with a U, hungry. All right? They have been told now year in and year out, hey, this is the year you make a bowl game. This is the year. Hey, get ready. Hope you don't have plans for Christmas because you better get ready to go to a bowl site. And then every single year for the last few years, since 2016, that has not been the case. Let's unpack their previous records. Nebraska fans, you want to cover your ears, you want to mute the show for a second, go ahead and do it. 2021, they were 3-9. 2022, they were 4-8. In 2023, they were 5-7. Now, I believe in both 2022 and in 2023, they had 5 one-score losses. In 2021, I think they had a bunch of one-score losses as well. So the bottom line here is it's been close but no cigar. It's been right there, but the details have been a little bit of the Achilles heel, if you will, for our folks out there in Lincoln. So I say all that to say with the 5 one-score losses, I think it's worth noting that if 2 of those one-score losses, a couple of different plays break your way, you're 7-5, and this is a different conversation. But neither here nor there. The good news, though, you got Matt Rhule as your head coach. You say, why is that good news outside of him giving absolutely fire pregame speeches, which if you haven't checked those out on the socials or on YouTube, I would encourage you to go do that after this show. The reason why that's good news is Matt Rhule is a builder. We've seen it many a time from both Temple and Baylor, taking them from the ashes and taking them to college football relevance and competing for conference championships. His average improvement from year 1 to year 2 at a specific program between Temple and Baylor is 5 wins. The Big Ten, granted, is more difficult than the American Athletic Conference or the Big 12, but still, 5 wins, that should give you a little bit of optimism. If you improve 5 wins from last year, if you're Nebraska, you're 10-2. Now, I'm not calling my shot for Nebraska to go 10-2 this season, but if you're just trusting the trends, you want to take that at face value, hey, all right, we're cooking a little bit here. The other good news with Matt Rhule is he is a detail guy. And I can speak to this with a little bit more authority here because I was under Matt Rhule's tutelage, which is a very verbose way to say that I played for Matt Rhule for like all of a few months. And the way that he runs his program, it is all about the details. It is about the socks you wear. It is about how you leave your locker. It is about how you do drills. It is about, do you false start on a drill? And if you don't do any of those things the way that he wants it done, from the top down, his staff does a phenomenal job. A lot of those guys that were at Baylor are now with him in Nebraska. He will make sure that you redo it and you do it right the next time. Why is that important? Y'all, you lose 5 one-score games, that's details. And last year was year 1, so they're still kind of installing those processes and procedures and culture. But that's not going to carry over long-term at Nebraska, I promise you. If it truly is razor-thin margins year in and year out for Nebraska, they're eventually going to end up on the right side of those things. And that's not me pitching you this, what's the probability it happens again? I'm telling you, with Matt Rhule, with the way that he hones in on the details, it's not going to happen again. There will not be another year, as long as he is the head coach, where you have 5 games decided by 1 score. Not going to happen. Another thing that's encouraging, I don't think the talent gap for Nebraska with the majority of the Big Ten is the major issue here. Like if Nebraska was just walking out there and getting mollywopped every single week and we're like, oh boy, kids, look away. It's about to be ugly. We got Iowa on the schedule this week. We got Wisconsin on the schedule this week. Look away. It's going to be bad. You're not saying that. If you're a Nebraska fan, you walk into most of those games with your chest out saying, all right, let's bring it. I like our matchups. Let's go win a football game. Now, it's had some unfortunate turns during those games for you in the past, and so that, kind of is what it is. But the fact that those games come down to the wire speaks to what's on the roster. Nebraska doesn't have to do this massive portal overhaul and flip the roster around. It's been a matter of a play here, a play there. Your team, the guys on your team, has been in position to finish the deal, and they just haven't. So the continuity, though, within that team is massive. You can't overstate that. They are number 3 in America in returning production. If you've watched this show for any length of time, you know I love returning production. You know I love the fact that you can build on what you did a season ago and carry it over to the next season. Nebraska was one of the best defenses in America last year. Sounds funny to say for a 5-7 football team, but they allowed 18 points a game. They bring back 78% of that production from last year's squad, and they got a future head coach in Tony White that's calling the defense. Sounds like I'm hyping up Nebraska. I'm just stating facts here. Just stating facts. The differentiating factor for this upcoming season, as opposed to last season, is Dylan Raiola. You're saying, JD, he hadn't been named the starter yet. Not even the guy yet. Y'all, he's going to be the guy. All right, we all saw that spring game. We all saw him just slice and dice throughout that spring game. 1, did not look like a freshman. 2, feels pretty obvious that he is the best equipped for that job. I think it's a matter of when, not if. Sean Callahan of Husker Online did a great job describing this. He's like, listen, we all know where this is going with Dylan Raiola eventually being the starter, just a matter of how we get there. Why is that important? Not just because he's got a sick haircut and has got the it factor and all those things, but because he's going to make defenses play you honest. Last year, Nebraska ran for right around 175 yards a game. Notice, though, nobody was concerned about Nebraska beating them deep. Why? Because Nebraska averaged 6 yards a pass. 6 yards a pass, y'all. I'm not checking my safety at 12 yards if I'm not worried about you throwing it over my head. With Dylan Raiola in the lineup now, you have to take that into account. Everyone saw Jalen Lloyd in the spring game turn and burn. Raiola drop it in a bucket. Big-time seam route down the field for a touchdown. Like, that's going to be what happens if defenses don't play Nebraska honest. If you stack the box, you will get burned. So that's one part of this. The other part of this is, and this is the major if, and this is the major we'll see with Dylan Raiola, but I feel good so far with what I've seen from him when it comes to decision-making. Now, I'm taking a lot from a little right now, and it's June, so like it is what it is. I think with Dylan Raiola, during that spring game, you saw him make some good decisions. And not just, he went in the right place with the football. I mean, when he was in trouble, I saw him be content to just throw it away. Now, that's going to be a tough habit to break if you're able to do things like that in high school where you run right and throw across your body left and you're just making superhero plays left and right. It's going to take some time to get all the way acclimated to that. But from what I saw in the spring game, I'm like, okay, he's learning, he's growing, he's adjusting to the college game. It doesn't look like it's too fast for him or too much of a moment for him. So what should you expect from Nebraska to kind of answer this question and bring it home here? I think 6-6 would be a massive missed opportunity. Just like it would. With all the guys you got back, with Dylan Raiola now probably going to be your starting quarterback, and he's got several years, like they could legit start 7-0. And that's not me calling my shot right now, but like going into Ohio State, they could be 7-0. They got UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, and at Indiana. They beat Illinois and Purdue a season ago without Dylan Raiola. With still being, in my mind, acclimating to the Matt Rhule way of doing things. So if they go 7-0 and finish 7-5, that script would be a little bit wonky because you go from winning 7 straight to losing 5 straight. You probably wouldn't feel great about that. However, if you go 7-5 and you get wins over Iowa or a win over Wisconsin, that probably feels a little bit better. The big swing games to me is at the end of the season, those final 3, where you got Wisconsin, USC, Iowa. Like those three games are going to be, to me, the deciding factor as to how high they finish or how well of a record they finish with. So I think 8-4 fires you up. I think 8-4 is probably the record I would be most content with if I'm a Nebraska fan. One, you hit the over. So if you put some money on the boys to cash out over 7.5, like, hey, more power to you. Buy the Christmas presents a little bit early. But the bigger part for me, if you go 8-4, it validates that you were never crazy as a Nebraska fan. You were never crazy because you were always piecing back the season together. And we did it with Will Compton. I think it was this time last week. We sat down with him, and he walks me through, hey, we legit could have been 9-3. We legit could be 10-2. And you're breaking down a play here, a play there, because that's all it is in a one-score game, a play here and a play there. But if you go 8-4, you're like, see, when we put it together, we got the roster talent to be able to compete with a lot of these teams in the Big Ten. Are we the Big Ten champions just yet? Maybe not, but are we a 5-7 football team? I don't think so. I don't think so with what they have in house. Now, I'm not trying to get the place too hyped up. I'm not trying to oversell you on Nebraska, but I will just say this. I don't think 9-3 is irresponsible. I don't think 9-3 should be your standard of what you hold this football team to, but I do think that 9-3 is attainable. Going back to what I said, those swing games, the last three, at USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Those 3 games will determine if you're able to get to that 9-win mark. The big differentiator for Nebraska, you just needed structure, you need quarterback play. And quarterback play doesn't have to look like first-team All-Big Ten. Quarterback play could just simply look like, hey, you don't throw the football to the other team. Period. Like Dylan Raiola, if he goes for, let's call it, 18 to 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, I think that is a 8-4 stat line. I really do. Because the defense is good enough, the run game is good enough, the culture, I believe, will be good enough to be able to win those close games. And, heck, Nebraska, they got to 5-7 a season ago, had 5 one-score losses. There's that number again, but they were giving the ball away like it was, a freaking shoe drive. Like they were just handing it out, anybody and everybody. Like Christmas Day, you get a present, you get a present, you get a present. I don't think that's going to be the way that goes this upcoming season. So for me, 8-4, I think is what you would be content with. Anything more than that, you're fired up. And this time next year, if you go 9-3 this upcoming season, you go to next year, you're like, all right, Big Ten title. Let's make that jump. We'll talk about that when it gets here. We'll unpack those things a little bit more in depth if that is the situation we walk into in 2025. But for 2024, Nebraska, 8-4 would be money. No pun intended, because, again, the over would hit there if you're talking about making some money on Nebraska. Let's stay in the Big Ten here. Y'all, have you noticed now Michigan is just like pretty much like not on the map when you talk about college football, national champion contenders, or we talk about teams that are going to win the Big Ten. Like we talk a lot about Ohio State and Oregon and all those. And it's like it's understandable. Like I get it 100%, but like, did this team not just win the national freaking championship a season ago? I see the reasoning. Before you're yelling at me, I see the reasoning. A lot of new in-house. New head coach, Jim Harbaugh gone to the league. God bless him. J.J. McCarthy, same deal. New coordinators. Some external, some internal promotions. The big thing that a lot of folks are, I think, hesitant about with Michigan, yours truly included, they are 128th in returning production. There's only 134 teams. So bottom line, you're counting on a lot of cats this upcoming season that you didn't count on last year when you brought home the whole hardware. So that's one part of this. That's the internal part why people are maybe a little bit more bearish on Nebraska or on Michigan. Other massive headlines, though, I think are also contributing to a little bit of coverage for Michigan when it comes to talking about them. One, your rival in Ohio State went to work this offseason. Michigan fans watching this video, you're not going to like me saying that, but, it's true. Made big portal moves. They got a quarterback in Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, one of the best backs from the SEC. Caleb Downs, maybe the best defensive player in college football. Oh, by the way, you're expanding the college football playoff. That's getting a lot of headlines. Also, the greatest coach of all time in Nick Saban, he retired. So, you had, I think, maybe a week, if that, from Michigan winning the national championship to Nick Saban retiring. But when Saban retired, that obviously is going to dominate the headlines. And then the ripple effect of him dominating the headlines, or that story dominating the headlines, then goes to, well, who's Alabama going to hire? Also, well, who's leaving Alabama? Also, the NIL world has been swirling like crazy. You got rev sharing now being a thing. The portal, even outside of Alabama, that second window, that created some buzz. And then the Big Ten is adding 4 new teams. And there's a ton of storylines around them, too. The urgency around Penn State. Talking about those new teams. Oregon, the urgency for them to be able to make a good first impression. USC, what are they going to be? They got a new staff. So all that's to say, the oxygen in the college football world and in the Big Ten has been taken up. There's not been a lot of room for the whole can Michigan repeat storylines. And even when people do want to take a look at that, they look at the returning production and they say, oh, there's no way. New quarterback, new head coach, no way. Here's what I would say. If the college football world is this party that's bumping and you got music, you got a big crowd, there's probably a lot of things going on across this room. Michigan just hanging back on the wall, sipping on some water, just like, hey, we're still here. Hey, remember us, national champions? Yeah, we're still hanging out. Don't worry about us, though. You guys have your fun, have your party. Don't worry about it. Michigan has prided themselves on being a developmental program. It might not always be in that top 5 when it comes to the recruiting rankings on signing day, but what Jim Harbaugh has done over the course of his time there is take guys that they are excited about physically and also competitive makeup-wise and mold them and develop them into being stars when it's their time to play on Saturday. The assumption that Michigan is just going to fall off the face of the planet, I think, is a little bit lazy because of what I just said. Just because we don't know all the names of the guys that are going to be studs for Michigan this upcoming season doesn't mean they haven't had dudes that have been developing and that are now going to step into their role to star for Michigan this upcoming season. Even if you don't believe in Sherrone Moore, that's fine. I think that's maybe a little bit irresponsible as well based on what he's done so far standing in for Jim Harbaugh. But that's fine. Jim Harbaugh and his process is still, in my opinion, going to impact this team in 2024. You say, hey, I can't buy into that. I don't know. I feel better hedging my bet on things that I know and people that I know. That's fine. Michigan's got a lot of dudes back, too, that you do know. You say, wait, J.J. McCarthy's gone to the league. Yeah, he is. Colston Loveland's not, who is arguably the best tight end in all of college football. Arguably one of the best defensive line combos, and Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, they're back. Potentially the best corner in college football, and Will Johnson. Donovan Edwards, chilling now on the cover of College Football 25. More power to him. He's back. So there's a lot of newness, yes, but there's also a lot of dudes that hoisted that hardware a season ago that are still in Ann Arbor. And the reason why I think that's important, you still have some guys that can step into a leadership role that have been to the promised land, that have seen it, that know the blueprint, that know what it takes to win a national championship. Sherrone Moore, even though he wasn't the head coach for Michigan when they won it all, he was still on that staff. He was still in those meetings. He still understands what it takes to get to the mountaintop. And we said this once, we'll say it again. Sherrone Moore has got to be Sherrone Moore. So stick with what worked. Stick with the processes that Jim Harbaugh had in place that allowed you to be successful, but where you can riff, where you can kind of differentiate, and you would maybe rather do things differently, whether it be recruiting, whether it be how you warm up, whether it be how you do spring ball, whatever it is, like, yeah, of course, lean into that. Be Sherrone Moore. But understand now, the championship genetics of this team are still very much there, still very much in-house. Schedule isn't easy, but I think 10-2 gets you in the college football playoff. The thing I love about Michigan, man, outside of Ohio State being in Columbus, a lot of their big games are at the big house. Like, they get Texas week 2 at the crib. USC at the crib. Oregon at the crib. I'm just saying, I don't think it's wildly irresponsible, that is, to think that Michigan could find themselves right back in that college football playoff discussion and maybe be a team that gets hot at the right time, out-physical some people, and makes another run to compete for a national championship. That's not a prediction. That's just a statement. Just a statement. I think it's definitely in the realm of possibility. A lot of new production, yes, but Michigan's not nearly as far gone as maybe some people would like to believe. Now, the big thing for Michigan in 2024 is going to be what you get at quarterback. And I think a lot of people are like, well, J.J. McCarthy's gone. They lose that explosive element downfield. They lost their changeup pitch. And don't get it twisted, whether it's Davis Warren, Alex Orji, Jack Tuttle, whoever it is, they got to have a little bit of change of pace to them, right? Because they're going to run the football. They're going to get downhill. Defenses are going to stack the box, try and attack the middle of your offense. So you got to be able to have something on the perimeter or something downfield to be able to offset that and keep defenses on their toes. That's 100% true. And J.J. McCarthy, as good as he was, and as much as I think he willed that team in different situations to a national championship, it wasn't like he was statistically lighting the world on fire every Saturday. Y'all, J.J. McCarthy did what was asked of him, played within the system. That's not a negative thing to say. Sometimes playing within the system has a negative connotation to it. I don't think it should for J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy threw over 300 yards in 2023 one time. One time. J.J. McCarthy and his stats from 2022 to 2023 are really pretty similar. Because that was a big talking point, was J.J.'s got to be better and they got to be able to have a change-up pitch and they got to be able to challenge defenses down the field, and that is 100% true. But you look at what he was in 2022, right around 22 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. In 2023, he was 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Now, in 2023, he was substantially more efficient, so that's worth noting, but only 200 yards more passing. I'm not saying that you need like a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback for Michigan. You need someone to be efficient, like J.J. McCarthy was in that championship run. You need someone who can give the defense something else to worry about, whether it's that second level of the defense, the read option kind of messing with the eyes of the linebackers with Alex Orji, or whether it's that third level of the defense with Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle, and I'm sure Alex Orji will have that in the bag if they end up going with him. But being consistent and being timely, I think, is the big factor for Michigan at quarterback. Because J.J. McCarthy, man, when the chips were down, when it was money time in 2023, he was there. He was your dude. Alabama, final drive, let's go. Let's go make history. Let's go get it done. Leads them out on the field, touchdown pass to Roman Wilson, had a myriad of other throws that extended that drive and made that drive what it was for Michigan. There was not a whole lot of situations where it was like a clunker from J.J. McCarthy and you got to overcome his poor quarterback play. He was steady. Ohio State game, same thing. He was steady. When his best was asked of him, he brought his best to the table. Didn't always show up in the box score, but doing what was asked of him is exactly what Michigan needed. And he met the call to action, and I think that whoever ends up playing quarterback for Michigan will have to be able to do that. So Michigan, under the radar a little bit, and I understand why. New pieces, new head coach, new quarterback. But 10-2 gets you in the playoff. Michigan has a lot of games at home that I think you would like to have at home outside of Ohio State. I wouldn't count out the Wolverines. I would not sell my Wolverine stock just yet. Hang on to that for just a little while longer. Now, speaking of stock, man, feel like our stock is booming here, Nick. Feel like we're in a good spot here, and the stock keeps booming. I say that because I see the live chat just going off. So make sure you're getting your questions in right now to Nick Break. We'll get to those in just a matter of minutes. We'll have time for probably 3 of those. So get those in right now so we can answer those in an orderly fashion. But before we get to that, though, I don't know if y'all saw on the social media, On3 tweeting out that the Netflix, reported by The Athletic, Netflix is looking into doing a little Drive to Survive style documentary series following some SEC head coaches. So this isn't final yet, but if we were to get this, who are the head coaches that we would want to see on this doc series? Now, full transparency, I saw quarterback. I did not see Drive to Survive or Full Swing. I think quarterback is from the same people, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not, feels like a very similar premise. I would love to see Billy Napier featured on this. The storylines itself is like reason enough to want to see this show or see Billy Napier be a part of this show. Most high-pressure position in the SEC right now. Everyone's got something to say. From Steve Spurrier to Princely Uman Mielen, who I don't think was trying to take a shot at Florida, but it kind of just ended up hitting the timeline that way. The Jaden Rashada situation is crazy. There's a lot of craziness happening this offseason around Florida. Brutal schedule. How does he handle that? To get a behind-the-scenes look at that and to see how he's dealing with all of the madness around him in a high-pressure spot in a big-brand spot like Florida, I think that would be phenomenal. That would be blockbuster. You could follow just Billy Napier this season, and I would watch. You could put it behind a paywall, and I would watch. Steve Sarkisian, coming off of a college football playoff berth, I think you would have to follow Texas, like first year in the SEC, reviving this brand that is Texas. Can they sustain that success? How do you deal with that pressure? How do you deal with that kind of success? And now everybody's gunning for Texas. There's no more talking points around, Texas, they're overrated. It's like, no, Texas is here, dog. Texas is here. And to be able to see how he operates in a meeting room, how he operates on the recruiting trail, how he operates on a game day, man. I mean, we've all seen that clip. We've all seen that clip of that. I think it's maybe a field operator who is leading Texas out of the tunnel and puts his hand on Sark. He didn't put his hands on Sark twice. I'll just say that, man. Intense dude. That'd be a lot of fun to see. Lane Kiffin, I think, Lane Kiffin not having a documentary series already feels criminal. Fascinating year for Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin obviously pushing the chips to the middle, going to the portal, landing Princely Umanmielen, who we already mentioned, landing Walter Nolan, going to work and adding Juice Wells at wide receiver, bring a lot of pieces back. Like it is playoff or bust for Ole Miss and Co. And I think there's sort of this perception that like Lane Kiffin is really out there and really public, and it's like, yes, he's on Twitter and he'll troll people and he'll tweet funny things, but like ultimately, you don't see Lane Kiffin doing a lot of sit-down interviews. We reached out to Ole Miss to try and get Lane Kiffin for a sit-down. It was like, hey, like we don't really do a whole lot of that. Like I think it's pretty much like if you're ESPN, you get Lane Kiffin. Outside of that, Lane Kiffin's not doing a whole lot of stuff that he doesn't have to do when it comes to sit-down video interviews. So he's actually a pretty private person. I don't say that to throw shade at Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin. I think it's phenomenal. But he's actually a pretty to-the-vest, calculated kind of person. So getting a full all-access look throughout the course of a season during a year for Ole Miss that is going to be, as highly anticipated as any other in Ole Miss football history, would be a lot of fun. Last one here, Kalen DeBoer. We've talked about him a few times on this show, but the story itself of following Nick Saban, the greatest of all time, I think would be worth a documentary series and definitely a documentary follow in this series if it ends up happening. First-year coach in the SEC. He's not from SEC country. How does he acclimate to the culture in the SEC and, to the barbecue, his first time trying that? Like, all that would be a lot of fun to follow. I would say this, though, too. If you did this documentary series, and if you've seen quarterback, Kalen DeBoer would come out of this thing being the Kirk Cousins of what he was to his documentary series. Meaning, like, Kalen DeBoer, I think, is such just a good human being. Not to say anything of the other guys I mentioned already on this list, but Kalen DeBoer, since we got to meet him in Tuscaloosa, just like normal, down-to-earth, great conversationally, nice guy, will give you his time, will give you thoughtful answers, like just a good dude, a very relatable dude. If you didn't know he was the head coach at Alabama and he wasn't wearing that gear, you would have no idea that this man is about to go run one of the most prestigious programs in all of college football. So Kalen DeBoer, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Billy Napier would be on my wish list if this doc series ends up happening. Netflix, let's get it done, baby, all right? Let's go. Let's get this thing done. Let's find a way to get this done. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love y'all being dialed in, man. The best part of my week every single week is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, getting to hang out with y'all and talk some college football, man. Great day to be alive. Great day to talk some ball. Who better to do it with than the heavy lifter, the people's champ? May or may not be kickball season, Nick Brake. Nick, what's going on, baby? Is it kickball season or no? We finish up. Still going?
Late June.
Late June, baby.
It's the next season.
Let's go. How are the legs feeling?
Actually, pretty sore.
Really? Okay. Well, that's good. You're training right now. You look strong. People on podcasts are missing out. You look strong.
No.
Off-season regimen's been treating you well.
I'm a easy 140 at 6 foot. That's not very good.
All I hear is rangy and aerodynamic. I love it, brother.
You do.
I love it.
You hear that one well.
I love it. What's going on, brother? How we doing?
Good. Key to Success asked, JD, what happens to the narrative of the ACC if Georgia Tech opens up and beats Florida State in Ireland?
Oh, my gosh. Could you imagine?
That would be kind of awesome for them.
Could you imagine? That would be wild. That'd be wild. It'd be great for Georgia Tech. It's tough because week 1 is always such a tricky thing to evaluate. Like, there's stuff that happens in week 1 that sets the course for the rest of the season. There's other stuff that happens in week 1 that gives you no real information on the season. Like, week 1 is just week 1. It's the first time for a lot of these teams to be able to kind of stretch the legs, see what they got. Some are ready, some aren't. The fact that it's in Ireland, too, is a whole other variable you throw into the equation. I would say the headlines coming out of it, fair or unfair, is how good is the ACC? Is Mike Norvell a product of previous portal classes? Like, there would be a lot of overreaction, as there always is in different sectors of sports media. What we would say is, okay, how did this look? What happened? What went wrong? Is this a talent issue? Is this an execution issue? Execution issues are usually fixable, especially if they occur in week 1. Teams don't stay the same from week 1 to week 12. I don't expect that to be the case for Florida State either. So if they lose, it would be surprising. There'd be a lot of headlines, but I do think that the overreaction would be tremendous, would be very, very immense in a lot of ways, and probably not something we should lean too heavily into if there ends up being those kind of overreactions headed our way.
Boosted 931 says Tennessee versus Ohio State national championship.
Whoa.
What do you think about that?
I think that'd be awesome for the On3 YouTube channel. I mean, two fan bases that are dialed in to our content here, dude. That would be – can you imagine? Because, like, the last 2 national championships, we have had a massive fan base in Georgia and Michigan, and then some smaller fan bases in TCU and Washington. Not to say anything of their prowess or prestige, but just like you have a smaller fan base for both of those. If you had Tennessee and Ohio State, that crowd would be so rowdy, and the implications of that game will be so massive. Like, the storyline of Ryan Day, because I'm assuming at that point, if he makes the national championship, they probably beat Michigan. So they were probably able to find their way over that hump and get that monkey off their back. And then Tennessee, like, where are we putting Josh Heupel? Like, did Tennessee win the SEC to find their way into that national title game? And how good is Nico? Did he win the Heisman? Like, there's so many different storylines that would be a product of those 2 teams being the national championship. It'd be a lot of fun. I'd love that.
Last question. This one's coming from Goat Dog, who's always on the show. So
Goat
good
Dog.
to have you. I can't find it, but I'm going to paraphrase. Basically talking about this year's G5 team in the CFP. Who do you think it's going to be? And said something about how it'll make everyone praise the football gods for the new format so we can get to see a G5 team in the playoff. You would disagree with that. But what do you think? What G5 team's playing this year?
I'll tell you what, man. If they go out there and just get mollywopped, it's gonna be a tough pitch in those boardrooms when you're trying to sell the G5 and future playoff spots. It's like, really? Y'all just got ran up on 50-17. Like, that's not good for business. People are turning that game off at halftime. I've seen a lot of different things when it comes to odds for teams to make the college football playoff as a G5. I think Boise State's interesting. I think Tulane's always tough. Those are the 2 that I'd look at most closely. It's also funny because, like, a lot of the G5 schools that were always in that, like, sleeper category, like Cincinnati when Luke Fickell was there and UCF, like, they're now Power 4 conference teams. So I probably would lean Boise State and Tulane. I'll watch those the closest. South Alabama will keep tabs on. Southern Miss will keep tabs on. So haven't picked our G5 horse just yet, but those are some of the early ones in the running that we're keeping an eye on.
Both of these teams lost a quarterback to the transfer portal, but Oregon State and Washington State are technically G5 teams.
They're playing a Mountain West schedule, I think, more or less.
But is a Mountain West team a G5 team, or is it a Power 5? Like, I don't know. What's that work? How's that work?
Yeah, they're going to be fascinating to evaluate this year. My gut is if Oregon State and Washington State run the table, or if one of them run the table, rather, I think they'll probably find their way into the playoff. I mean, I don't know what spot they would occupy at that point, but I think they would find themselves in that playoff.
I don't know how that works.
You know what? Nobody does.
Is an independent team a Power 5?
I don't think they're independent yet.
Or G5?
So Notre Dame being independent is like a power conference caliber team, but they're not considered Power 5, which is why they're always like that 5 seed, even if they go undefeated, which we'll see if that changes. But it's murky. It's very murky, and the best part of this whole thing, Nick, nobody's in charge. No,
Yeah.
we're just flying down the highway. Nobody's at the wheel. We're just gonna see where this thing ends up at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, someone calls you tomorrow and says, Nick, you're the commissioner of college football. Do you take that job?
I would defer to anyone else at On3 and say this person should do it, not me.
Hey, just a man of the people. Man of the people. Nick, any last takes? You had a hot one yesterday, Parks and Rec over The Office. Anything you want to leave the folks with?
And that's my opinion. I do obviously know that's kind of a hot take, but I do think Season 3 of Parks and Rec is better than any other season of The Office. I'll go out by saying this. I put in the poll this morning, what will you miss about the old CFP, CFB, essentially meaning the college football that ended last year. That was what we knew for the last decade or so. First place, tie the Pac-12 and Nick Saban. A 4-team CFP is in third, and then Texas and OU being in the Big 12 is the last thing. And then someone made a kind of a funny point. It was Jimmy Lee. He said, man, Nick Saban leaving compared to an entire conference, a Power 5 conference team leaving, being the same, just shows you, he says, what the SEC means for college football. Is that a good point?
Dude,
or is it just Nick Saban,
that's
not the
a great
SEC?
point. No, that's a great – I think that those are great points. What I was going to say is great poll by you.
Thank you.
To lock in all of those. Like that, honestly, in itself could be a segment.
Yeah.
We might have to do that in the future. But, yeah, I mean, the SEC in itself is its own monster, and then Nick Saban being the head of that monster, and now that that monster having a new face, it's going to be different. So, yeah, I love that. I love that though. The Pac-12, it's gonna hit different. We're gonna have Big Ten after dark, which will be kind of weird, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Nick, you're the man. Two great ones in a row, from Parks and Rec over The Office to the old CFB, crushing it on the final break takes.
We'll have a new poll tomorrow.
Let's
See
go.
you, JD.
See you, Nick. All right, same time tomorrow, man. We appreciate y'all. We love that y'all take time out of your day. Just enjoy some college football. We understand, man, there is a lot of things in life that are begging for your attention. And so for y'all to say, nope, I got an hour just to dedicate to the hard count, to hang out with my people, to hang out with JD and Nick, like that means something to us. We do not take that for granted. We consider ourselves extremely lucky to get to do this for a job. And we consider ourselves extremely lucky to be able to do it with y'all. So we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all